The Stone, Dead. "This ghost," said Marcus, scratching at the paper with the sharp point of his pencil crayon, "is green, and he shoots ectoplasm, and his name is Slimo." Leslie lifted her own pencil crayon from the intricate labyrinth of her anti-stress colouring book and looked at what her son had drawn. The vivid green scribbled over the outline of his ghost. "He looks terrifying," she said. "And when you look at him," said Marcus, "he goes invisible." Leslie looked at her watch. "You can show your drawing to Grandma," she said. "She'll be here in 5 minutes." "I'll come at 1, her mother had said. She always came at 1 o'clock. It was her time, and she was always precisely on time, on the dot of 1. Leslie sometimes wondered if her mother sat outside in the car, or even stood on the doorstep, until the clock struck the hour. She never had to apologize for arriving late, nor looked as if she had rushed. Leslie went to the window and looked out, but her mother was not in sight. She said to Marcus, "I'll go and put the kettle on." "Can I have a biscuit?" asked Marcus. "We'll have biscuits when Grandma arrives," said Leslie. Leslie was in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to come to the boil, when the grandfather clock in the hallway struck 1. Whatever the hour, the clock chimed once. Whether it was 1 o'clock or midnight, the clock chimed once. And Leslie had begun to associate that single chime with her mother's arrival, so that throughout the day and every day, when she heard the clock strike 1, a little part of her panicked, whether her mother was due or not. Leslie heard the knock at the door, and when she stepped into the hallway, there was her mother, visible through the glass as if summoned by the chiming of the clock. The clock was an heirloom. As a child, Leslie had been afraid of it. Its chiming had made her think of the farmer's wife chasing after the blind mice with her chopper, 2 different nursery rhymes getting mixed up. She had got confused, and how silly anyway, she thought, to be afraid of a clock. "This ghost," said Marcus, appearing beside her, holding up his drawing, "doesn't have any friends." "Well," said Leslie, "maybe we could be his friends." "No," said Marcus, "he's not very nice, and he doesn't like us." Leslie opened the door and said, "Come in, Mum." "This place is impossible to get to," said her mother. "Obviously not impossible," said Leslie as her mother came in. Leslie began to close the door, but her mother stopped her, drawing her attention to the state of the house's exterior. "Your paintwork's looking tired," she said. "I'm having all mine done by a man from the village. He's doing a fairly acceptable job, although he can be lazy. I have to keep an eye on him." Her mother's visits always began with a litany of criticisms. The front garden needed weeding, the windows needed washing, Marcus's bike was on the path in the way. "And did you have to choose such a poky little house?" she asked. "Can't you ever just be happy?" said Leslie. "You wanted me to leave Tom, and now I have. You wanted me to move closer to you, and now I have." "I wanted you closer than this," said her mother, following Leslie into the kitchen. "I thought you were going to live in Slights." "I'm a 10-minute drive from you," said Leslie. "That's nothing at all." "It's not nothing," said her mother. "I seem to be forever on that road on my way to visit you." "Well, you're here now," said Leslie. "Shall we have a cup of tea?" She fetched the cups and saucers out of the kitchen cupboard. Her mother would not drink from a mug. "And biscuits," said Marcus, who had appeared very suddenly at Leslie's hip. "Are you going to show Grandma your drawings, Marcus?" asked Leslie. "Come on, Grandma," said Marcus, leading his grandmother into the living room. When Leslie went to look, Marcus was saying, "It doesn't actually have eyes, just black holes that go on for ever and ever and ever." The water in the teacups clouded, darkened. Leslie spooned the tea bags out and added milk, not too much. She carried the tea and biscuits into the living room, where Marcus was saying, "This ghost," he pointed to a thickly penciled outline right at the edge of the paper, "is afraid of all the other ghosts." Leslie put the tray down on the table and Marcus reached for the biscuits. "He watches too much television," said Leslie's mother. Maybe he did, but Leslie did not think that was where these ghosts came from. Ideas just got into his head, like how he used to think that when people died they turned to stone. When they had lived with Tom, there was a war memorial whose stone soldiers looked cornered, and Marcus always touched them as he passed. He had seen in towns and cities the stone statues of people who had died there, and he saw them in graveyards, the stone dead, men, women, children, dogs. Sometimes the stone figures were broken, which meant that the ghosts could get out, said Marcus. They didn't want to be trapped inside. Leslie sometimes found herself looking at the world the way he did, forgetting for a moment that this was not the way things were. "He's just got an imagination," said Leslie. "He's got too much imagination," said her mother, as if it were a bad thing, like having too many biscuits, like it might make some part of you rot. "What's this?" she asked, picking up Leslie's colouring book. "It's a colouring book for grown-ups," said Leslie. "What's the point of that?" said her mother. "It's anti-stress," said Leslie. "It's rather nice. It makes me feel like a child again." "But you were a miserable child," said her mother, closing the colouring book and putting it to her side. What have you been up to?" She said to Marcus, "I hope you haven't been inside all day. That's not healthy for a boy." "We were waiting for you, Mum," said Leslie. "I thought we could take some sandwiches down to the beach." "In this weather?" said her mother, eyeing the agitation of the bare trees through the curled window. "We don't have to," said Leslie. No, said her mother. "If that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. Though I won't be able to walk on the sand in my heels. I'll have to wear my driving shoes. They'll be ruined." Leslie packed up the sandwiches that she had made. Again she said, "We don't have to take these to the beach." But her mother said, No, we'll do it your way." The three of them went down the steps to the beach, and her mother complained about the distance, and the wetness of the steps, and the damp sand, the damp rocks. Marcus ran on ahead, this playground vast while the tide was out, and it would not come in until after dark. Every now and then he stopped to inspect something amongst the rocks, and when he lifted something up, Leslie said to her mother, "He's found something." "Nothing dead, I hope," said her mother. Leslie called Marcus over to them. He showed them his grey stone, which he said might have a fossil inside. It might have been trapped inside the rock for millions of years. "You can put it with the one I gave you for your birthday," said his grandmother. "Right," said his mother. "Sandwich time." Marcus put his stone down to take a sandwich from his mother. "You can have a little fossil collection," said his grandmother. "I broke your fossil," said Marcus. "You broke it?" said his grandmother. "Well, that was very careless of you. Do you know how old that ammonite was? More than 100 million years old." "It wasn't an accident," said Marcus. "I smashed it with a hammer to let the ghost out." Leslie avoided meeting her mother's eye. She said to Marcus, "At least the ghost will be happy now, won't it? Eat your sandwich." "No," said Marcus, "it's not happy. It doesn't want to be a ghost, but it did want to get out. The ghosts always want to get out." "Eat your sandwich," said Leslie. "I'll never give you anything nice again," said his grandmother. They ate their sandwiches standing up, huddling into themselves. They walked along the wind-swept front and through the town, in whose shops Leslie's mother always seemed to be hunting for something quite precise. She inspected teacups whose pattern was right but whose size was wrong, and side plates whose size was right but whose pattern was wrong. After a couple of hours, Marcus began to complain until his grandmother shut him up. They had tea in a cafe. When the waitress came for the crusts of Marcus's mini pizza, she asked if they would like dessert, and his grandmother said, No dessert." As they left the cafe, Leslie looked up at the darkening sky and said, "The tide will be turning." They made their way back to the house beneath the threat of rain. Leslie and Marcus came into the hallway like people glad to be out of a storm, though it had not yet happened. Leslie's mother, who remained on the doorstep, said, "I'll go now." "You don't have to go just yet," said Leslie. "Will you have a cup of tea first?" "No," said her mother. "With any luck, I'll make it home before the rain comes." "Are you angry, Grandma?" asked Marcus. "Are you angry because of the fossil?" But she did not reply. Leslie, unbuttoning her coat, unzipping her boots, asked, "Are your shoes all right, Mum?" "They're damp," said her mother. "Oh dear," said Leslie. "The wet sand has got into them." "You'll be welcome to borrow something," said Leslie. "Your feet are too small," said her mother. Seeing that Marcus was struggling with the zip of his anorak, Leslie bent down to help him. "Grandma's going now," she said. "Say goodbye." "Goodbye, Grandma," said Marcus. "See you soon." The heavens were opening, and Leslie said, "Look at that rain. You can't drive in that, Mum. You don't want to be driving on wet roads." "You don't want me spending the night here," said her mother, "do you?" "Will you call?" said Leslie. It was routine for her mother to let Leslie know when she was safely home. "Yes," said her mother. "I'll call." "Time to get ready for bed," said Leslie, steering Marcus into his bedroom. She closed the curtains against the darkness outside. "I don't want to sleep downstairs," he said. "Well," said Leslie, "we have to sleep downstairs. There's only downstairs now. Arms up." She helped him out of his top. "I liked our old house better," said Marcus. "Yes," said Leslie, "me too. But it's nice being by the sea, isn't it? It's nice living closer to Grandma and Grandpa, isn't it?" They were quiet for a moment, while outside the rain continued to fall. "I don't think Grandma loves me," said Marcus. "Of course she loves you," said Leslie, holding her son's pyjama trousers for him to step into. "She comes to see you, doesn't she?" "She comes," agreed Marcus, "but I don't think she loves me." "She's upset," said Leslie, "because you broke her fossil." Marcus climbed into bed. "Will you stay with me?" he asked. "I'll stay until you fall asleep," said Leslie. She lay down with him and read a story that frightened him, and then dimmed the lamp, and sang softly until she fell asleep beside him. The telephone was ringing in the hallway. That's what had woken her. By the dimmed lamplight she left her son's bedroom and picked her way across his room, placing her feet carefully between his strewn toys. When she opened the bedroom door, the hallway light that flooded in was painfully bright. She pulled the door to behind her and picked up the phone. "Leslie," said her stepfather, "is Ruth sleeping there?" "No," said Leslie. "Mum left after tea." The grandfather clock behind her chimed, and she turned and saw how late it was. She should have been home hours ago. "I'm going to drive over," said her stepfather, "in case she's broken down somewhere." Leslie turned her head towards the front door. Had she heard something? The porch light was on, but she could not see anyone through the glass on the doorstep. With her phone still pressed against her ear, she went to the door and opened it, but there was nobody there. She looked out at the turbulent night, trying not to think about her mother's car crumpled in a ditch with the doors wedged shut or shunted under a lorry, her mother dead on impact, or not quite dead but trapped. "I'll stay near the phone," she said to her stepfather. There was a tremble in her voice. She felt unsteady. Do you think I should call the hospital?" The hairs on her bare forearms were standing on end. She shut the door again and locked it. As she stepped back down the hallway, with her stepfather's voice in her ear, it took her a moment to notice her son, wide and awake, and standing in his bedroom doorway. "This ghost can't ever be happy," said Marcus, and Leslie looked for the drawing in his hands, but his hands were empty. He reached out to hold on to her, holding on to her clothes, not looking quite at her, but over her shoulder, towards the front door, in through which had come all the cold air that Leslie could feel at her back. Cold air in which the chiming of the grandfather clock still seemed to vibrate.